Well, today we're basically gonna go through the seven-step manga creation process that our mentors, our pro mangaka mentors in our program teach our students and have taught us over the years. And we're going to be breaking it down and talking all about it and perhaps help you guys finally get started making your manga and actually finish making your manga, you know? So if you've spent years struggling to create your own manga, then this session is for you. All right. And for today's session, this is what we're going to learn. All right. We're going to learn the 7 steps to create your first manga, which are number 1, ideation and planning, 2, writing, 3, visual design, 4, storyboarding, 5, pencil sketches, 6, inking, and 7, finishing slash shading. And we've broken down this entire process with the help of professionals, our pro Japanese mangaka mentors, Naoyazawa and Renesaya, who have had over 50 years of combined experience in the industry, and they have won contests, worked with publishers, and self-published their own works. And Yazawa Sensei actually has her own anime called Wedding Peach. Her manga Wedding Peach was adapted into an anime back in the 90s, and she also has published several how to draw manga books. And currently she's teaching at a manga school in Tokyo, like our other mentor, Rena Sensei, who's also a professional mangaka and has actually published several how to draw manga books and is also working on her new serialization as well. And we're also working with pro webtoon artist Steph Pastrano, who is famously known for his really amazing anime fan art, but he's also actually working on his own webtoon right now. And our newest mentor, Vivi, who is a pro manga editor who's worked with Japanese publishers for 10 years. Okay. We have a 10-year veteran who's worked with multiple mangakas over the years that they've worked at Japanese publishers. And she's also worked with publishers like Kadokawa and Koamix. And Koamix is actually the publisher behind Fist of the North Star and is the organizer behind the largest international manga competition, the Silent Manga Edition, right? And with the guidance of these pros, we've helped over 400 beginner mangakas in the last 3 years, and we've seen them transform their manga journeys. So first up, we have our student Raven, who's struggled with her art when she first came to us, and now she's finished her first one-shot manga. And you know what? It only took her 4 months to produce. I mean, just look at how much she's progressed in that span. She just started out just doing illustrations, but eventually she finally made her first real manga and first one-shot. And we also have our student Eduardo, who actually published his latest shonen battle manga, Cobra the Kid, on Manga Plus Creators, and recently joined the Silent Manga Edition last February. And we also have our student Steven, who's been developing his original characters and actually joined the Japan Greece Manga Contest in April and is now joining the next upcoming round of Silent Manga Edition. And now we're here to share our insights and knowledge so you can finally create your first manga this 2025. All right. Are you guys ready? If you guys are ready to get started, just type "I'm ready" in chat. I want to make sure that you guys are settled and you guys are pumped for today's session, just to get everyone hyped and focused. Just type "I'm ready" in chat. All right. Okay. Okay. Loving all the enthusiasm in chat right now. I'm seeing a lot of "I'm ready's." All right. So if you guys are ready, make sure to settle in and stick around. If you believe you have a unique story to share through your manga, but after years of working on it, you still don't have anything to show, and if you feel lost and overwhelmed trying to figure out all trying to figure this all out by yourself and you feel like you're not moving forward because you don't know where or how to get started, and if you want to find the right mentorship so you can finally publish your manga, join manga contests, and eventually work with publishers. And I also want to tell you, you can leave right now if you simply just want to improve your art and not necessarily make a manga, right? If you know you're not going to do anything after this session, then you can just leave right now, okay? Because what's the point? Even if I reveal all of the secrets and techniques in the world, gonna it's not gonna matter if you don't take any action, right? So if you're only gonna listen but don't take action afterwards, then you can just leave the session. All right, I don't want to waste any more of your time. And you can also leave right now if you think you can learn and do everything by yourself. Because if this is the kind of mindset that you have, then you don't really need us, right? And if you're not willing to commit and make a conscious effort to practice and make time for your manga, then I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you don't just become a better artist after a single day, a single week, or just a month. You know, you have to invest your time, effort, dedication to truly become a better artist. So if you're not ready to make that commitment, then you can leave, okay? And if you give up easily when things don't go your way, then I don't think the session is for you, because we're doing this because we want to make things easier for you, right? But it's not going to be an easy process, right? Learning how to make manga is definitely not an easy process, especially if you're learning from scratch and you're starting from zero, right? There will still be struggles along the way, and we want to work with artists that are ready and willing to work hard to overcome that, right? So, for those of you who have stayed and are still with me right now, I just want to say congratulations, all right? Drop some clapping emojis in chat for everyone. Let's all celebrate. I mean, if you're still here and if you're still watching, that tells me that you're ready to take action. You don't want to stay stuck in the exact same situation you came in, like struggling with drawing, and you don't want to feel stuck or lost or frustrated or insecure anymore. So just a few claps for you. Give yourselves a pat on the back. You guys are choosing to empower yourselves tonight. And I think the power of manifestation, not to get all sentimental, but the power of manifestation does work, you know? So the more you say it out loud, the more likely it'll become a reality. So if you keep saying that you can make manga, then eventually you will be able to make manga, right? So make sure to stay until the end to learn how you can get personal mentorship from pro Japanese mangakas and a pro manga editor, and land an all expense paid trip to Japan to pitch to publishers. All right. So just a little bit about us and why we're doing this free training before we officially start. Just a bit of backstory. Okay, let's take it back a bit. So this is our Trisha. She's the owner of Learn to Draw Manga and an online art brand called Artillery Philippines. And just like you, Trisha loves anime and manga. And because of her passion, she came to Japan in 2013 and has actually been living in Japan ever since. And yes, when she came to Japan, she saw so many opportunities for aspiring manga artists there, including the opportunity to learn. And how can you learn how to make manga? Well, there are actually manga schools in Japan where you can study at technical colleges for 2 to 4 years just to learn how to draw manga. And when Trisha was younger, she loved anime, manga, and drawing, but there were just no resources to learn how to draw manga outside of Japan. You know, she could only dream about it. So she thought it was just unfair. I mean, she'd think, just because I'm not from Japan, I don't have this opportunity. And even though she did manage to move to Japan, she still couldn't afford to go to manga school, right? So she wanted to make learning how to draw manga more accessible and affordable to aspiring manga artists around the world, and that's why we're doing all of this right now. So, we at Learn to Draw Manga want to empower each and every one of you We want to help you go from stuck and struggling to confident and fulfilled by creating your first published one-shot manga. And we want to help you overcome your self-doubt and perfectionism by learning the right skills and developing the right mindset so you can prove to yourself that you can do this. All right. So before we officially start the lesson, I just want to let you guys know that you can make manga. Again, the power of manifestation is a powerful thing. So you have to tell yourself you can make manga. Now, I want to take this time for you guys to just type I'm ready to make manga in chat, okay? Just to get in the mindset of okay, I'm here, I'm present, now I'm ready to make manga. All right? And also make sure to get your pen and paper ready because you will have to take some notes during the session, right? All right, just let me know. Just type I'm ready to make manga if you're ready. All right. No, you guys, I'm not Trisha. I'm Candace. I'm the person who does the live interviews. So no, Trisha's not the one hosting today. I'm sorry about that. Now I realize I didn't actually introduce myself at the start of the session. Sorry for the confusion, you guys. But yes, I am host Candace, not Trisha. All right, hello, you guys. Thank you for joining me today. All right, if you guys are ready, and if the confusion is if no one's confused anymore, just let me know. And if we're ready to proceed, let's proceed. All right. So I think everyone's ready. Everyone's ready. Everyone's good. All right. All right, you guys. So first things first, I want to start the session by talking about something every one of you should avoid. All right. And this is the number one beginner mangaka mistake. Okay. So can you guys guess what is that number one mistake? Drop your answers, your guesses in the comments. What do you think is the number one mistake a lot of beginner mangakas make? I mean, it's something that we've talked about time and time again on our channel. It's something we actually made an entire dedicated video on this one mistake. It's one of the bigger videos on our channel, actually. So, if you guys have been subscribed and if you've guys seen any of our previous videos, then you should know what this is. But any guesses? What do you think is the biggest mistake? We have never drawing a manga. Could be procrastinating, making it too long, making it too complex, perfectionism, over planning, going for perfect, not plan ahead, not starting, not finishing, not even starting, aiming for perfection. All right, a lot of good answers in chat, but I did spot some of you, some correct answers. Some of you were right. The biggest mistake is making your first manga too long and too complicated, especially when you have zero experience, right? So congratulations to the people who got it right. And also, something to note for the people who didn't know that this was actually the biggest mistake. Something to keep in mind, right? Because we've definitely spoken to a lot of aspiring mangakas who've made this exact same mistake, right? So you've been developing your story for years or even decades with multiple characters, a lot of storyboard, a lot of story building, lore, power systems, and making too complex, right? This is something that a lot of beginners actually start off with because a lot of the beginners that joined our program, at least, they've all been developing their stories for years, and until now, until the point when they joined the program, they'd never finished anything before, because they were just making their story too long. And if you feel like you have to create your own magnum opus with 50, 60, 70, or even more chapters, that's also could be one reason why you haven't finished it yet. And you've also started on multiple stories and don't even have a single one out and finished, right? If you're guilty of any of this, just drop an I'm guilty in chat, or just like raise your hand. Drop a hand emoji in chat if you're guilty of any of this. I mean, have any of you guys ever just not finished a project, just not finished a manga? Like, you have a ton of drafts in storage that just never ended up going anywhere. You know, if that's you, then just drop an I'm guilty in chat. Because reality check for today, the reason why you haven't finished anything is just mainly because there's a lack of focus, right? So for today's session, I need you guys to focus. But how do we do that? Okay, how do we focus and actually finish your first manga? So that leads me to my next question, you guys. What's the ideal number of chapters for a beginner? Drop your answers in the comments. This is important if you want to focus, right? If you want to focus, it's important to have a clear goal. So that clear goal should be your first manga, right? And how do you make your first manga? How long should it be, right? So what's the ideal number of chapters for a beginner? All right. Seeing a lot of ones, three, ones, maybe 1 to 3, 20. I'm saying chapter, guys, not pages. 300 pages. Oh my goodness, 300 pages? Really? That's a bit much. Okay, I'll say. Even some of our pro mentors struggle with 300 pages. They would not recommend that for a first time. All right. So that said, the correct answer is 1. You guys, you have to learn how to make a one shot, one single chapter that's tells a story from start to finish, a complete story from start to finish in just a single chapter. All right. And a lot of pro mangakas get a break through manga contests. And you know what a lot of manga contests require? Just a one shot, right? And a lot of publishers also commission just one single chapter until they get reader survey results. And the popular one shots get a serialization. So if you think about it in terms of like manga and compare it to a TV series, right? So a TV series would get one pilot episode and one season. And if it's not popular enough after that first season, then it doesn't get renewed for a second season, right? So if your manga isn't popular after that one pilot chapter, then it doesn't get a series. You know, do you guys get it? And that's how it is in the manga industry. I mean, actually, you guys, most of the popular manga, had pilot chapters. You had Naruto, Dragon Ball, and Attack on Titan, for example. They all had pilot chapters. And if the one shot was popular enough, and as you know, Naruto, Dragon Ball, and Attack on Titan went on to become very popular manga series, right? So once their pilot chapters performed well among like readers, then they got to go and work with an editor to refine the art and story, and got accepted for a serialization, right? So the key thing here is you should not obsess over the details of your one shot. And I know so many of you here want to have an actual manga series. I know, like, once your one shot is approved for a serialization, that's when you work with an editor to improve the details. Like here in Naruto, I mean, the character design for Naruto at first was a bit different. And actually, if you've ever had the chance to read the pilot chapter for Naruto, one very stark difference from the actual manga is that people were using guns in the pilot chapter of Naruto, you know? So imagine Naruto with guns. You know, it's unimaginable. I can't see it. I mean, after reading and watching Naruto, I can't see the world where people just wielded guns, just casually. So it's kind of crazy. And it's kind of crazy how a lot of things changed from the pilot. And also from Attack on Titan, the art in the pilot chapter for Attack on Titan was so different. And actually, if you've read the pilot chapter for Attack on Titan, which I do recommend, it's a great pilot chapter, honestly, despite like the rough art. I mean, if you can look past the art and just focus on the story, it's a good story, you know? And again, if you do manage to read it, you'll notice that none of the characters in the pilot were in the final series, right? Eren, Mikasa, Armin, Levi, none of them were in the pilot chapter. They were only introduced once the series got greenlit. And yeah, there's also something you need to think about, right? So your art, your story, your characters, you will get to improve on them once you're up for serialization. So for your very first manga, as your very first project, and as someone who started from zero and like hasn't built up their skills yet, it's important that you don't aim for perfection yet. Okay? So, which leads me to my next question. Like, what's the ideal number of pages, right? We've already said just a single chapter, but how many pages for that single chapter? What's the ideal number of pages for that single chapter? Just drop your guesses in chat. Again, this is something that we've spoken about again and again on the channel, so our subscribers our subscribers should know this, you know. If not, then you haven't been watching our videos. All right. 16 to 20 pages, 10 pages, 1 to 20 pages, 16, 1 to 16, 30 to 60, 49, 30 to 20, 40 to 50. Interesting. All right. So, you guys, correct answer. Some people did drop the correct answer in chat. It's 16 to 20 pages. So, how do you guys feel about 16 to 20 pages? Just personally, do you think that's too short? Is it too long? Is it too much? Let me know. How do you feel about 16 to 20 pages? Just let me know in the comments. Tomoki Ito, kinda short. Too short. For the people who say too short, have you guys ever finished a manga before? Too short, but maybe I'm not good at pacing. Plenty of time. Okay. Reasonable. Kinda long. What was the question? Yeah, kinda short. Okay, for the people who say that 16 to 20 pages is too short, like why do you say it's too short? Have you guys ever finished a manga before? I'm curious to know. Yeah, it definitely feels too short. I can't show off enough stuff. Huh, yeah, interesting point. I would say it's just fine. Never finished. I just started 2 chapters slowly learning. Okay, Julian. I think Julian says, I never finished. I just started 2 chapters and I'm slowly learning. So, Julian, if... Was Julian the one who said that they think it's too short? I forget the people who said that it was too short. Kai-san and Half Piece and Tomoko? Am I saying that right? Tomoko Ito, right? For you guys, I would love to know what if you guys have ever finished a manga before. For Crazy and Pink Tiff, if you feel like you can't show off enough stuff in 16 pages, it's not about showing off. It's about building your skills and being able to tell a complete story, you know? And often, simple is best when you're making your first manga, you know? Because it's such a limited number of pages, it actually forces you to think about, okay, how can I make the best possible story and tell it in the least amount of pages, in 16 to 20 pages, you know? That's a challenge in itself. And if you can tell a complete story in 16 to 20 pages, then you can definitely tell a longer story. Because starting small can lead to big wins, right? And that's actually something that our mentors have talked about in our program. According to Naoyazawa, you can forget about becoming a pro mangaka if you can't tell a good story in 16 to 20 pages. And Vivi, who is a pro editor with 10 years worth of experience, she says, I'd rather have a good short story than 60 pages of confusion, right? So the average number of pages for one chapter in Shonen Jump is actually 20 pages, and you need to hook your readers and make them want more within that limited amount of pages, you know? So do not overwhelm yourself with an impossible task of making a 100 chapter manga on your first try. I mean, don't even try a 50 to 60 page one shot yet, because that's a bit too much for someone who's starting from zero and has never made manga before, right? So we always recommend that you start with a standalone one shot with 16 to 20 pages. And these are pros who are already giving you this advice, you guys. All of our mentors say this. Start with 16 to 20 pages. That's the right amount, and it's also the right amount that can challenge you to improve your storytelling skills and not just your art, you know? So 16 to 20 pages is the way to go. Now, if everyone's accepted the fact, okay, now the goal here for me, if I've never made a manga before, is to make a one shot with 16 to 20 pages, how do I go about that? How do I do it? So now we're going to get into the 7 steps to make your manga, okay? So for the first step, ideation and planning. Our teacher, our mentor, Renesaya, says that the most challenging part of being a mangaka is coming up with good ideas, you know? So here's an ideation formula that you can use to come up with an idea. What if, subject plus verb. Very simple, just fill in the blanks, right? So let's start with this example, okay? What if a teenage boy who's a martial arts prodigy turns into a girl when exposed to cold water and turns back into a boy when exposed to hot water? Do you guys know this manga? Just drop your guesses. What do you think what do you recognize this premise? What is this manga? Let me know in chat. And if you've watched Don to Don recently, I mean, I've been catching up on the latest episode of Don to Don just last night, actually, and this manga was actually referenced by one of the characters, which is so fun. Yeah. What do you guys think this is? Rama? Yes, that is Ranma Half. You guys, that's a manga by Rumiko Takahashi, who is the same lady who made Inuyasha. All right. Yes, Don is so amazing. I love to see fellow Don enjoyers in chat. You guys, if you haven't seen Don, I really do recommend it. The manga as well. Like, the anime is great, and the manga is great too. So, if you can find the time to do both, read and watch both, then highly recommend. Okay, so let's try that one more time. Let's have another example, okay? So, what if a boy who's a martial arts prodigy finds 7 power stones? What manga is this? Drop your guesses in chat. Do you guys know what this is? I mean, it's a classic, you guys. I mean, even if you haven't read it before, everyone, any decent manga or anime fan knows what this is. If you don't know what this is, then I'm kind of questioning you and your manga knowledge at this point. What is this? Okay, Dragon Ball. Yes, it is Dragon Ball, you guys. And just like that, that's how you can switch up the subject verb formula to just come up with different ideas, right? And since it's so easy, you literally just fill in the blank with a subject and a verb. You can actually make a bunch of these. And what we typically suggest our students to do is they just make up a bunch of what if scenarios. They just list them down, right? And our students can write up to 20 to 10 scenarios just like this and just basically go through the process of elimination. They go through their list and gravitate towards the one that really stand out to them and really speak to them, you know? So let's say, for example, you come up with 10 to 20 ideas. through process of elimination, you choose the five that stand out to you, right? Then you bring it down to the to the top three until you get to the one idea that really speaks to you, right? And once you have that idea, next is you need to identify your target audience. Okay, so if you want to be a pro mangaka, you need to learn to create a story that an audience would enjoy, not just you, your family, or your friends. All right, well, it is important that you love your own manga. It's important that you are interested in your own manga and that you have a passion for it. You also have to understand that a successful manga isn't just about what you love. It's also about what connects with readers and what would make readers want to read your story, right? On an emotional and entertainment level, right? And many aspiring artists fall into the trap of creating stories that are only interesting to them. Like, oh, I'm gonna make this manga because I want to, because I love this story. I don't care what other people think about this story. As long as I love this story, I'm gonna be making this manga. I mean, if your goal is to just make manga for yourself, then sure, you can do that. But if you want to make manga to publish and actually share with readers for other people to enjoy, then you have to think about how other people will respond to your manga, right? So I also say that you shouldn't just show your work to your family and friends, because like while your family and friends um are technically outside opinions, they will support you like no matter what. And a wider audience won't have the same obligations. Like complete strangers won't feel obliged to support you once they do read your manga. I mean, they won't read your manga just to be nice, you know. Instead, they'll read it because it's compelling, it's engaging, and delivers an experience they genuinely enjoy, right? So being a pro isn't just about drawing what you like, it's about crafting something that others will love to read too, you know? So ask yourself, who is this manga for? You know? And most of the most common manga demographics in the industry right now are shonen, which is manga aimed at young boys aged 12 to 18, and shoujo, which is aimed at young girls aged 12 to 18, seinen, aimed at men aged 18 and above, and josei, aimed at women aged 18 and above. So if you want to get published in Shonen Jump, then your target audience should be shonen or young boys. And if you want to feature more mature themes in your manga, then your target should be over 18. So if you want to target um boys who are 18 years old and above, then you'd be making seinen manga. Or if you want to target women over 18 years old and above, then you'd be making josei manga. All right. And one of the most common beginner mistakes a lot of beginners make is just having no idea who their audience is, right? Because often some beginners don't even think about who they're making the story for, you know. And as storytellers, that's something that you need to figure out very early on. Like one of the first things you need to figure out, because as a mangaka, you're also a storyteller, right? And what's the point of telling stories if there's no one around to hear them, right? So you have to think, who am I making this for, and who's my target audience? Because often this is also something that a lot of beginners struggle with. Like they're trying to make a story just for anyone, you know, like if they can't decide on a target audience, they just make a story for anyone. And what do you call it when you want to draw for everyone? You know, that is a recipe for disaster. Even One Piece, the most popular manga in the world, still has haters. I mean, it's arguably the most universally loved manga, but even so, it still has haters. You know, you can't make manga that's for everyone because that's impossible. You know, there's no such thing as a story that every single person in the world will agree is good, you know? And trying to please everyone would only jeopardize the story you want to tell. So rather than try to aim to make a story for everyone, think of your main audience, right? And concentrate on your main audience. The next, once you figured out who your main audience is, next thing you need to do is to create a one sentence pitch, and this is called a logline. Okay, so what's a logline? What's the point of a logline? So imagine you went to an anime convention, right? Or a comic convention, and the special guest is an editor from Shonen Jump. And you go into an elevator with them, you meet them, and it's just the two of you, right? And you have 30 seconds to tell them your story. Okay? You tell them your logline. Your logline is something that you can tell within 30 seconds, essentially, or a minute, you know? And here's an example of a logline, okay? So, after an orphaned high school girl discovers her classmates are cursed to transform into animals of the Chinese zodiac, she helps them break the curse while finding her own place in the world. Okay, what logline is this manga for? Let me know your guesses in chat. What do you think this manga is? Um, any guesses? Okay, finally. Okay, Fruit Basket. Yes, it is Fruit Basket, you guys. And just like that, that's how you make a log line. And we do the same exercise with our students. Just being able to create a one sentence pitch like this has helped them boil all their ideas down into a solid story idea, and it's helped them focus. So once you have your one sentence pitch, it's time to move on to the next step. Now, before I move on to the next step, I want you guys to know that we do have an upcoming logline workshop where we teach you how to make a logline, and we also give feedback to any loglines that you guys may have. So if you want to get feedback on your logline, on your manga logline, then make sure to stay tuned and watch out for our upcoming workshop on that, you know? So, moving on to the next step. In your logline, do not use character names or terminology that another person will not understand. Okay, so if you're making a logline and you're a beginner and basically you're telling this to someone who's never heard of your story before, don't use your characters' names, you know, like Toru Honda or Dragon Ball, you know. So for Toru Honda, you use the term an orphan girl. For Dragon Ball, you use the term Power Stones. You use terms that basically anyone can understand, you know. Because if you basically say Toru Honda is interacting with a bunch of men who are cursed to transform into the Chinese zodiac, you know, like people will think, who the heck is Toru Honda, you know? And that's not a great visualization tool for people who have no idea what your story is, right? So when you're thinking about your log line, you have to make sure that you paint a picture, right? The way you go about it is you paint a picture and you explain your story in as obvious terms as possible, you know? So, to help you create your log line, you can just answer your 5 W's and 1 H. And I think a lot of people have learned about this in school at some point. The 5 W's and 1 H are who, what, when, where, why, and how. All right. It's important that you do not skip any of these questions. Like, who is your main character? What is their goal? When does this happen? Like the 21st century or the year 3000? Or where does this happen? Japan, the US? Why does the MC need to hit their goal? And how does the MC hit their goal? Right? As you answer this question, you can already start to create an overview of your story. And once you've answered all of this, the next step is writing. Okay, now we're getting into the plot. Okay, this is a written summary of your story to help you visualize the scene. And what a lot of beginners struggle with is that they tend to write pretty long scripts and just pretty long manga to the point that they never finish it because it's getting so long, you know, because they keep adding on stuff. And here's how to avoid that. All right. So for 16 pages, if you're making a 16-page manga, you only need a 1-page plot summary. Okay, if you add the dialogues, then you might end up with 2 pages. So it's fine if you add dialogue, but just as long as you make sure that your plot summary is concise, all right? Don't make it too long. And to create a compelling plot, you need these 4 elements. Ki, sho, den, ketsu. All right? How are you going to divide your 16-page one-shot, right? You divide it in between these steps. Ki, sho, ten, ketsu. And this is actually the basic manga storytelling structure, Kisho Tenketsu, which stands for introduction, development, twist, and conclusion, right? So if you were to divide 16 pages into these four stages, then you would perhaps dedicate 4 pages for the key, for the intro, or 4 pages for the development, 4 pages for the climax, and then 4 pages for the resolution, right? That's one way to go about it, but you can adjust as necessary. Okay, so you gotta plan your story out ahead of time, just like this. Just so you know, okay, these are the story beats that I need to hit, and this is how I can start to plan out my manga just visually, you know? So, how many pages are you going to dedicate to each element, to each story, each story stage, right? So, that's something that you need to think about. And once you've got that down, next step is to plan your visual design. That's the character design and the setting design, which is optional. I mean, if this is your very first one shot, setting design perhaps isn't as important, but it is something that we're going to be talking about a bit for today. So, first up is character design, right? So, when we asked our students to show us their own original characters, right, we didn't give them specific instructions on how to design their characters yet, because a lot of the students who join our program, they already have this original character in their heads, right? So we just asked them to show us their characters, and they did show us some great designs, right? Look at these character sheets, beautifully drawn characters with really interesting costume design. But when our pro mangakas would ask them, okay, why were they designed this way? Like, why are they dressed like this? Why do they look like this? And 99% of the time, their answers were, oh, because I thought they looked cool, you know? And that's it. They didn't really have any explanation for why their characters looked that way. They just drew characters that they thought looked cool. They were all about the visuals and all about the aesthetics and how they looked, right? But when you're designing characters, you have to draw them with intention because their design is actually a reflection of their personality. And there are actually 3 levels to character design. First is visual design, second is features, and third is essence. And most people just focus on visual design. This is just the tip of the pyramid, right? And quite a few people do get to level 2, which is their features, and this is their character profile. So, just to give you a brief example of a character profile, right? So, the features are basically like a character resume, if you will. It's usually what you would see in a character profile, like here, like this profile from um JoJo. This is a profile of Joseph Joestar, and this is actually another profile from one of our students. And a lot of beginner mangakas only stop at this profile, right? Just the very basic stuff like name, age, what's their gender, what's their blood type, what's their zodiacs, and like other traits. But it's actually just not enough to create a truly memorable character, right? You gotta think about the essence. Like, who is your character as a person? And for for now, I just want you to think of one of your OCs, right? If you have an OC in mind, if you have an original character in mind, think about them. Or if you have multiple characters, just choose one for now, okay, for this instance. And once you have that OC in your head, I want you to let me know their name in chat. Just drop their name in chat, share it in the comments. What's your OC's name, right? All right. Vinny, Kaito. All right. So once you guys have dropped your OC's name in chat, I want you to think, if your OC saw an old lady trying to cross a busy street, what would they do? I mean, for anime lover, what would Kaito do if they saw an old lady trying to cross a busy street? For Constantinus, what would Cookie do if they, sorry, not to assume, if they saw an old lady trying to cross a busy street, what would they do? Just drop your answers in chat. What would your OC do if they were in this scenario? Oh, interesting. We have some we have some apathetic original characters in chat. Nikome says their OC would do nothing. Ryomen says their OC would just ignore. Okay. Okay. we have some hero characters in chat. Tomoko says their OC would help. Lily says he would try to help them cross. Nathan brings up an interesting point. She doesn't have much of a personality yet. I'm working on it. All right, all right. Hopefully this session helps you with that. Helps you figure out, okay, how can we work on their personality a bit more. Okay, interesting answer from Anime Lover. Kaito would hesitate for a moment before standing by her side to make sure she's safe to go to the other side. After that, he'd give a small bow before walking away. I love the detail. The way that you described that, I immediately pictured it in my head, and that's a good trait, to have if you want to be a mangaka. You have to be able to visually describe your scenes, not just verbally but also visually. And if you can verbally like describe what's happening and what your character would do in detail, then you can draw it in detail as well. All right, all right. I love your answers, you guys. I love knowing about your characters. It's always nice to learn about people's original characters, and also it's nice to see, okay, how, if I could compare these characters to an existing character that I already know about. And it's also nice. It's always nice to see some inspiration. All right. So as you can see in chat, each of your characters, each of your guys' original characters is going to react differently to different situations because they're different people, right? So take Team 7 from Naruto, for example. Naruto would carry the old lady on his back. Sakura would hold her hand and guide her to cross the street, whereas Sasuke would just ignore the old lady, as Sasuke does. So yeah, according to Yazawa Sensei, designing characters is literally imagining and creating a person with a history, relationships, goals and motivations, fears and struggles that shape their entire personality. So just think about your favorite anime and manga characters. I mean, they mean so much to you, not just because they look cool, but because you love their story, right? You want to know about their story. You want to know more about them. You get so invested in your favorite characters that you read until the end, right? If the series is still ongoing, you watch out for the next chapter, and as soon as the next chapter is up, you have to read, okay, what happens to my favorite character? And for any Jujutsu Kaisen enjoyers in chat, if you were reading Jujutsu Kaisen as the chapters were coming out, and if your favorite character was Gojo, I guess at some point in the series you would anticipate what would happen next, right? So if you know, you know. So for me personally, I went through that, and I was on the edge of my seat. No spoilers in chat for the people who haven't read it yet. Someone just spoiled it in chat, but I think a lot of people know at this point. I mean, I think it's the most spoiled um plot twist on anime at this point anyways. So sorry you guys if you've never read Jujutsu Kaisen. Then sorry for the spoiler. But yeah, because you get so invested in our characters, right? Your original character deserves that same kind of love and attention. Okay? So your OC isn't just a drawing on a page or a name in a script. They're the soul of your story. So if you want readers to care about them, you need to give them the same love, depth, and attention as any iconic manga protagonist. So if you think about the most memorable characters in manga, right? Luffy, Naruto, Guts, Deku, and many more. These characters, they don't just have cool designs, right? They have clear goals, strong personalities, emotional depth, and flaws that make them feel real. Okay? So you gotta create and design your characters with the same amount of love uh, as you would have for like your favorite manga character, right? So they gotta have a backstory, they gotta have motivations, wants, and needs, and you have to figure that out right from the get-go, right as you're writing your story. You can't just figure it out along the way. And the next is we have setting design. Again, this is optional. You could do this if you have extra time. But setting design is basically the world that your characters live in. Okay, so you have to imagine the world that your characters live in. Like if your character lives at home, you would have to think, okay, what does your character's room look like? So if you have a fictional world as your setting, you could also create rough sketches. And sketching it out does kind of help with being consistent with with your settings throughout your manga, right? And when you would explain, and if you would explain your manga to an editor, having sketches like this would also give them a better idea of what your world is like and what the setting is like, and they can have a picture in their heads, right? And after writing and character design and setting design, the next step is storyboarding. Okay, so are you guys guilty of skipping storyboarding and just drawing pages as you go? I want to know. Just type "I'm guilty" in chat. Have you guys ever made a storyboard before, or have you guys ever tried to make a manga and just skip the storyboard altogether, or do you guys just not know what a storyboard is? Let me know. Constantinus, to answer your question, that's Look Back from Tatsuki Fujimoto. That's the same mangaka behind Chainsaw Man, which is it's not an anime movie, it's actually a one-shot manga. The anime movie is an adaptation of the one-shot. Yeah. Now going back, have you guys ever skipped the storyboard? Do you even know what a storyboard is? Just type "I'm guilty" in chat if you've never made a storyboard. Or if you just skipped making the storyboard. Okay, Ryomen. Good for you, Ryomen. Ryomen's not guilty, so that means you've never skipped storyboarding? Really? Tiff says, no, that sounds terrifying to me. I plan a bunch beforehand always. That's good. That's good. Because the storyboard is an essential part of the manga making process. Even pros storyboard. Eiichiro Oda's storyboards. I mean, Akira Toriyama storyboarded. You know, every great pro mangaka does the storyboards. You know, because the storyboard is a blueprint for your manga. It's just like you wouldn't really start building a house without blueprints, right? You wouldn't just go about putting up walls and putting up a roof if you didn't have any idea how to place them or to how to like set them up, you know. So without a blueprint, you wouldn't make a house, and without a storyboard, you shouldn't make a manga, right? You shouldn't start drawing your manga without a well thought out storyboard, because if you draw pages without a plan, you might realize too late that something doesn't work and you'd have to redo entire pages, right? And also, a storyboard is what you would show your editor before you move on to actually inking and finishing your manga. You know, your editor has to approve the story first before it moves on to finalization and inking, right? So a storyboard saves you time by helping you catch problems before you start inking and finalizing your work, okay? So don't skip, because you're more likely to end up with a poorly planned manga if you do. So in Japanese, the storyboard is called a nemu. It's name, but in Japanese it's pronounced like nemu. And there's an art to visual storytelling, right? Your nemu will provide you with an overview of the whole flow of your story. So just imagine watching a movie, right? You just sit, watch, and everything flows naturally, right? It's the same with manga, you know? So just take a look at this spread from My Hero Academia, right? Our eyes enter from the first speech bubble from the top right, and we go down through that panel to the second speech bubble. Then we go to the largest panel. This is the focus panel, or mesegoma in Japanese. And then we go to the third panel and follow the dialogue till the end of the page up to the bottom left. And the flow here is pretty straightforward, right? As you can see, I've already like outlined the flow on screen. So that way, your reader's eyes have to glide through your panels and pages without them even thinking. All right? And just take a look at these pages from Fire Sakura by CTXNS, right? What do you think is wrong with these pages? Do you think there's anything wrong with these pages? Because first off, there's a lot of headshots and bus shots. There's not a lot of dynamic scenes and shots here. It's all just similar angles and perspective. It's redundant paneling, and it's also heavily reliant on dialogue to drive the story. I mean, you could just read the dialogue. You don't even have to watch the characters at this point, you know? Because the characters, all they're doing is just standing around, you know? So, how can we fix this? This is something that our mentors always have always have to repeatedly remind our students, right, whenever they're giving feedback on their works, is that you always have to bring it back to showing instead of telling. So show, don't tell. You got to let your art speak for itself, and you got to let your scenes speak for themselves, right? Because like when you watch a movie, there are different scenes. There's long shots, mid shots, close up shots, fight scenes, emotional scenes, and it's the same with manga. So when you're framing and when you're planning out your scenes, this is already the storyboarding stage. You already have your beat sheet, you already have your script, and now it's time to like visualize it on a page. So at this point, you've transitioned from being a writer to being a director, right? So now you have to think of yourself as a director of your manga. Like, how would you frame this scene? How would you film this scene if you were holding a camera, right? So for example, like let's check out these two different versions of the same scene with the same characters, right? This is just a storyboard. So the example on the left is a single panel with all the dialogue and all the characters in a single panel, right? So it's a guy asking a girl if they want to go home together today. And in that single panel on the left, the dialogue is the whole exchange is done within a single panel, right? So want to go home together today? Sure, that's just the one panel. Whereas the one on the right is much more dramatic. It's very shoujo manga-esque. So there's just one dedicated panel focusing on the male character asking the girl if they want to go home together today. And suddenly there is a ma panel. Now, a ma panel, ma, in Japanese is actually, I think, silent in English. So silent panels, Japanese mangas are very fond of using silent panels because these are the moments in between scenes where readers just react and take in what's happening, right? So reactions are really important when you're trying to tell a story, and it's very evident in Japanese manga where you have these panels where just someone is just like, it's just someone's face reacting, or it's just someone's eyes, even like in this example, and then they respond in the next panel, in the final panel. It's a big illustration, a sweeping illustration of them seeming, it seems like they're in a park and they're just standing close to each other. The girl has her hands behind her back and she says, sure. So this way, it's much more cinematic. You get so much more invested because you can clearly see the girl's reaction and you can see how romantic the setting is. So that's one way you can switch up your stories, right? And that's one way you can think like a director. Just think of, I think, just think of how you would shoot this if you had a camera. I guess that's one way you could think about it. All right. So here's the next point, right? Storyboarding is important, and you also have to storyboard the thumbnails for a manga. Now, what are thumbnails? Now, thumbnails are actually miniaturized, kind of like miniaturized versions of your storyboard, where all you can see really is like the panels and I think the speech bubbles as well, and you can just like see how your overall manga looks, from like an eagle eye point of view, where you can just see all the pages in one go, so this is where you can pinpoint, okay, what scenes seem redundant and what scenes don't work well with the next page, and you have to actually think about all of your pages and evaluate. Okay, ask yourself, are there redundant scenes or weird flows? I mean, can you combine scenes to make it tighter? And this is especially important, especially if you're working on a limited amount of pages, right? And another thing you need to keep note of is you have to thumbnail in 2-page spreads, and being able to see the balance and flow between spreads can help give you an overview of all your scenes. And being able to know, okay, what's the first panel of this first spread and what's the last panel of this first spread, right? Because that's what's the last panel of your first spread is what's gonna incentivize people to turn the page, right? That's your pull panel, right? For every 2-page spread, there is a pull panel, and that's the last panel of every spread, right? And that is what's gonna make people turn the page, on to the next spread. Because like as you're reading manga, you're actually reading 2 pages at a time, especially if you're reading like a physical copy, like a physical manga magazine, right? It's whenever you turn a page, you see 2 pages at a time. So when you're making manga, you have to think about, okay, how does it look as a spread? Okay, and the first panel on the right page of your spread is your entry point. That is the opening of your scene from your previous page. That is your reward panel, if you will, because once the people turn that page and they see the first panel that they see should reward them for turning that page. It should answer the question that you left in the previous page, basically. And the last panel on the left of the spread is your exit point, right? And readers have to feel like they want to flip the page again. And just for example, right? This is a storyboard from our student Raven. Okay, this is the first draft of her spread on the left. And she started off with this and sent this to our mentors. And after going through multiple rounds of feedbacking, right? Multiple rounds of revisions, her final storyboard ended up looking like this after getting feedback, right? It went from 13 panels and she brought it down to just 7. And every panel matters and everything has to be intentional, right? Because I know beginners want to include a lot of info on their manga, but the thing about Japanese manga that makes it stand out from other Western comics is that they value the principle of less is more. Okay, and here's another storyboard from our student Courtney. Now, this first draft, when she sent this in for feedbacking, Sensei actually suggested that she added reaction shots, and this is what her final storyboard ended up looking. So after that note, her storyboard became so much better. She added reaction shots, she tweaked the composition of the scene a bit, and really emphasized the impact of the hit more, and also upped the emotional stakes, if you will. By adding reaction shots, it makes the scene feel a bit more powerful because you can see how the characters are actually reacting as they make that punch, right? So now, after looking at these storyboards from our students, remember, don't be scared to edit. Okay, while in the storyboarding phase, your first draft will always need edits. So it's better to make your edits now than later because it'll be so hard to edit beyond the storyboarding phase, all right? Now, once you've finalized your storyboard, next is to move on to your pencil sketches, right? So when you're making a manga, you want to have a B4 sized manuscript paper, and this B4 sized paper will be printed in B5. So it's going to be compressed and sized down. So if you've ever seen any manga documentaries before, or if you've ever seen footage of mangakas like making their manuscripts, you'll notice that the pages that they use, the manuscript paper that they use, are actually kind of big. And that's a B4 size manuscript paper. But when they print it, they actually size it down, right? An important thing to note is that you do not want to draw beyond these margins, all right? These are your bleed lines, and anything beyond that is going to be cut. And we actually have a more in-depth discussion about these margins in our latest video on the channel, which you can check out. We tell you, okay, what exactly are each of these lines? What are these symbols? What are these parts of the manuscript page? And what do they mean? So this image right here, it's a right page, and it's positioned on the right side of the spread. So the margin on the left, as you can see here, is thicker, and this is where the spine of the manga is for when it gets printed. So that's something that you shouldn't draw over, especially since, like, if it gets tucked into the spine, people won't see it at all. So there's no point, right? And you can buy manga manuscript paper with these guidelines, or you can just set the paper size on your digital program like Clip Studio if you're drawing digitally, right? So buying paper is expensive, you guys. So a lot of the pro mangakas right now are, most of them are drawing digitally. Our mentors draw digitally, so they usually just pick out a preset on Clip Studio and boom, you already have your like guidelines, okay? And actually you can find manga presets for these guidelines on Clip Studio Paint if you just look up how to do it. We actually discuss how you can find these presets on our latest video again, so you can check that out if you want to learn more about how to set up the guidelines on your manuscript paper, right? And then the next step is inking. Now, when you're inking, you ink line art, panel lines, speech bubbles, speed lines, and beta. Now, beta, these are the pure black areas in manga. So as you can see in this example here on the left, the hair in that guy's beanie, these are beta areas where it's purely just inking in and filling it in with black, right? And you could also ink using your Clip Studio Paint, which is the go-to manga drawing program that all of our mentors use and a majority of pro mangakas use nowadays. And Clip Studio Paint is usually the way to go. But if you're drawing traditionally, a lot of old school mangakas still ink traditionally, and they use dip pens, all right? But we do not recommend that you use fine liners, because fine liners, they're a bit more difficult to use for beginners. These are pens on the right. And you could also use futa brush pens and white ink. You need to be able to use futa brush pens if you want to draw wide sweeping strokes for hair, like so. And also use white ink if you make any mistakes, right? That's what mangakas use to clean up their mistakes. White ink is definitely like a go-to for mangakas. They always have it on their desk and they always have it ready. And then finally, we're moving on to finishing. Okay, so after inking, that's when you add screen tones and shadings and effects, right? And screen tones are basically made of tiny dots that create gray shading. So if you think manga has gray, then you think wrong. Okay, manga is purely black and white, but there are scenes where you think, oh, that looks gray. It's not really gray. It's just screen tones. It's just tiny dots that create gray shading. So these screen tones come in different patterns and designs, and you can apply them digitally or traditionally. But traditionally, it's very hard to find traditional screen tones in Japan, and also they're very expensive. And if you're drawing traditionally, that's another added expense that you have to think of, right? And if you're outside of Japan, it'd be much more harder to find just traditional screen tones, right? So that's why most people just add their screen tones digitally. All right, and using screen tones adds more depth and helps create the mood of your scene, right? Now, these sparkle effects, also the effects on the character's hair, that's also a screen tone as well. That gradient is a screen tone. And just like this, you can give your scene more depth and make it more interesting to look at, basically. So if you want to learn more about shading and just adding screen tones, then you can check out our YouTube channel. You can check out these videos on screen after this live, maybe, if you want to learn more about it. But those are basically the 7 main steps to creating your first manga. So to recap, that's ideation and planning, writing, visual design, storyboarding, pencil sketches, inking, and finishing or shading. And we're giving you a roadmap so you don't have to keep going around in a circle feeling lost and stuck. And again, we've broken down this process with the help of some amazing professionals, right? Reminder, you are not a pro mangaka yet, so do not expect or pressure yourself to go through this whole process in just 1 week or just 1 month, right? I mean, as our pro mangaka Nao Yazawa says, creating a proper one shot is 10 times more stressful than just drawing characters, especially when you start working with an editor, right? If you want to become a professional mangaka, aim to create at least one finished one shot per year. And creating your own manga takes time, it takes effort, and it takes commitment, you guys. So, I want to ask you guys, if you have to deal with so much mental anguish, like you think, am I good enough? Am I doing it right? Is it worth it? Then would you rather do it yourself, or would you rather have a proven path to success? Okay, so these are our students who've actually joined the program, and at some point in their journey, they thought they weren't good enough, or that they didn't have what it takes to actually make manga, you know? So this is our student Courtney, and Courtney never made manga before joining the program, but she did have some drawing experience and she drew really well. But now she's already finished her one shot and joined the wordless manga competition, and she's already moving on to working on her next one shot, right? Because that's what's important, is to keep putting in the work and not just stop at your first one shot once it's finished, right? If you're satisfied with the one thing that you've made, then you can't really improve, you know? And we also have our student Garrett, because Garrett, he's also never made a manga before, and he's already finished storyboarding his one shot. And we also have our student Amser. And when Amser joined, he did have some drawing experience, but he wasn't happy with where his art was, as you can see. But now he's already been working with us for this past year, and he's already finished his one shot, submitted it to the silent manga edition, joined other manga contests, and is already working on the storyboards for his second one shot, you know, and he's already massively improved since his first one shot. So if you want to get guidance and mentorship our students have had exclusive access to, then we invite you to apply to our online one-shot manga drawing program, you guys. So you will have some amazing mentors to guide you if you do join the program. These are pro Japanese mangakas Naoyazawa and Renesaya, also Steph Pastrano, and our pro manga editor Vivi, again, who's had 10 years of experience in the Japanese manga industry. So, are you excited to work with these amazing mentors? Do you want to work with these amazing mentors? Because we're not just taking in anyone. The better the fit, the better the results. And we want to work with aspiring mangakas who are ready to commit and challenge themselves to be the best that they can be. And if you do join the program, you can get a marketing boost on your manga, because we will collect our students' best works and promote them on our platform so you can get more exposure. And also, we have a very exciting project in the pipeline. We are putting together an LTDM manga anthology, where it's really just a collection of our students' works that you guys can read, you know? So if you do join the program, you could get a chance to get published in our manga anthology as well. And for the most committed and high performing students in our program, the journey doesn't end with just creating your first one shot, because it could take you all the way to Japan, right? Fly to Japan on an all expenses paid trip to attend Comitia, which is a top indie manga convention where you can pitch your manga directly to Japanese publishers and editors. All right. So if you do join the program, you will have a chance to go to Japan and go to Comitia, but only if you stand out, right? If you stand out and if you perform really well in the program and you get great results and you manage to finish like your first one shot and then your second, then you will be considered for this opportunity, right? So if you want in, here's how the process works. This is for you if you're at least 18 years old and can comfortably write and speak in English. You're a beginner mangaka who feels lost and stuck and finally wants to feel confident putting your manga on paper and sharing your stories with the world. And you want the fastest path to gain the right skills to self-publish, join manga contests, or even pitch to publishers. And you want mentorship from pro Japanese mangakas and a pro manga editor. And you want to join a community of fellow mangakas who are in this journey with you together. All right? So if this sounds like you, I would like to invite you to book a free manga consultation with us, and we will only take in serious applicants, you guys. So this is it. This is a moment of truth. We want to empower you, right? But there's really no point in telling you all of this info about the manga making process if you're not willing to take action yourself and you're not willing to just do something after the session, right? So if you don't want to stay stuck in the exact same situation, and if you're ready to commit, and if you're ready to get results and actually make progress, and you feel like you deserve this opportunity and you want guidance and you want to be part of this community, then this is it, right? Will you take action? or will you not? Will you just stay stuck forever? So I do invite you guys to apply to our program today. So all you have to do is to click the link in the description or click the link in chat. I'm going to be sending the link in chat. You can apply via this link here. Or if you want to learn more about the program, you can just go to our website, learntodrawmanga.com, and you can also apply there. So if you want to learn more about our mentors, if you want to learn more about the exciting opportunities, and if you want to see how our students have felt being in the program and what their experience was, you can also check out our website to see their testimonials there. So, yes,